very briefly, because we had some people who weren't here the last time, just go around and only your name and your daytime association. Not why you're so concerned about dual credit at this point. And we'll start down here. Marcus?
Good afternoon, Marcus Robinson, CEO of Tinley Accelerated Schools here in Indiana.
Heather Moffitt, Vincent University.
John Rigby, Tech Community College. Jason Callahan, Superintendent of Boyle City.
Bob Baines, State Representative and Chair of House Education Committee.
Winnie Magner, State Representative and Director of Rural College District.
Good afternoon, John Elstester, Director of Indiana Non-Public Education.
Jason Beers, Commissioner of Education.
Jim Beard, Department of Education.
Janet Boyle, Executive Director of Center of Excellence in Leadership Reporting.
Terry Lambert, Transfer Indiana with the Commission for Higher Education.
Dennis Cruz, State Senator and Chairman of the Senate Education Committee.
Michael Lynn, Associate Vice Chancellor of Affairs at Mineral Central.
Amos Harris, Director of Government Relations, ISTA.
Vince Bertram, CEO of Project Leader Way and Early University Board of Education.
Chad Thurman of the Governor's Office.
Bill Kanye, Executive Director, Indiana Office of Community and Rural Affairs.
Mary Ellen Hamer, Vice President of Independent Colleges of Indiana.
E.J. McGrew, Department of Workforce Development.
Mike Dean, Indiana University.
Great. Well, we're delighted, the superintendent and I are both delighted to welcome you here and to tell you thank you for continuing to work on this very important issue with us. We have, I think I'd like to start off with some encouraging news, although it is not the end of the story by any means. But we did have an opportunity to continue to do some of the work with the Higher Learning Commission in response to various concerns that were raised from states. You will find second in your packet behind the agenda for today, board action regarding determining qualified faculty. You probably are aware of this because I know by looking in the room, everybody in this room cares about this issue very much. But what this essentially means is that they will be allowed to apply for an extension to the deadline, which would have been September of 2016. You may recall that they already had moved that a little bit before. Earlier, it was going to be January of 2016. 2016 was, is that right? Yes. 2017. Yeah, the perfect was 2017. I'm sorry. They had it at January of 2016. It moved once before to September of 2017. But we, along with many other people, talked to them about the fact that when you're talking about the issue before us today with more opportunities for teachers to continue their education, regardless of what we do on other fronts, those who would want to do that, you know, a matter of months or even a year is not enough to accomplish that goal. So the decision was made on November 5th to allow either the institutions in the state or whatever the coordinating board would be for the state in terms of being oversight for higher education to apply for an extension to 2022. It is the intention of the Commission for Higher Education to do that. But when we do it, we cannot do that just in one way and say Indiana would like to apply for an extension because we need more time. What we will have to do, to the extent that we have information at this point, is we would have to have documentation from each school, from each campus that's providing dual credit as to the reasons why the extension would be important. And that would have to be included with our sort of overall request for an extension. So I think that's encouraging, but as we know, as I said before, we still have many other issues that we need to deal with, and we're going to try to do some of that today. So if you'll, I think I'm just going to remind you of a few things as we start, and just as we're picking up from where we left the last time, remind you of the purpose of the bringing the Dual Credit Advisory Council back together again, and it really was to communicate our concerns about the proposal, that both the original decisions that were made and then the guidelines that were issued after that, and the impact that would have on dual credit in Indiana and teachers in Indiana. In particular, we wanted to make sure that they would consider the fact that we needed some increased flexibility in doing this, and that we thought that the guidelines were overly prescriptive. So today we're going to also look, as we talked about doing last time, to focus on what would be some of the solutions to make sure that we can continue to provide the kind of opportunity in Indiana that we want, knowing that we have strong evidence of the benefit of dual credit in terms of students being more ready to do college-level work. Today's agenda will be the superintendent and I will spend some time providing some updates the last meeting. The bulk of our time today, Janet Boyle from Excel will be talking to you about potential solutions going forward, and really hopefully solicit some of your ideas about how we can do that as well, and then end up with what should we do now? What would be our next steps to make sure that we can handle this situation? And so, let's see, I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Superintendent, and let you provide some information about what you've been working on.
Sure. So Sue Elferman and I went to the Chicago meeting, the board meeting in which they actually gave us this action to delay it till 2022. And at that meeting, we both gave testimony. And so the three main areas that we testified about were the tested experience, being able to include that as flexibility. So the teacher has already had tested experience in the field in which they've been teaching, and that would count because they've expressly forbid that it counts regarding the dual credit. And so we talked about that. We talked about the discipline versus subfield. Still unclear as to what the 18 hours actually needs to be in as the subject, the discipline subject matter, or a very specific subfield of that. And so we'll probably still seek some clarification regarding that. It's still not very clear. And then the implementation timeline. In fact, I ended my testimony by saying, you do know that high schoolers have to sign up for these courses a year in advance. We have to have teachers that are qualified to teach them. So both of our testimonies are provided for you. So they serve as talking points really on the topics that we were addressing, the areas where we wanted to see flexibility. There are 19 states that are underneath the Higher Learning Commission. And I just came from the CCSO conference where all the chiefs in the nation meet, and we were in North Carolina. And they canceled the meeting actually for all of us to meet since they moved out the possible deadline to 2022. However, I did get to talk briefly with the two states that have the most concerns with Indiana, and that was Wisconsin and Minnesota. They both have still concerns, the same concerns that we do from the Higher Learning Commission. I think their people are starting to head towards, well, we're resigned, this is going to happen to us, so here's what we need to do going forward. But I think those are also two states who are still ready to push back some on the actual guidelines that have been issued. So with that,
There was another meeting also that I just came from, Midwestern Higher Education Compact met last week, and the head of the Higher Learning Commission, Barbara Gelman came and spent actually 4 hours with us. Of the 19 states that are accredited by HLC, there are actually 12 states in the MEC compact. There are 4 national compacts in India as part of MEC. And she came and spent about 4 hours with us on one day, talking about a variety of issues, hearing concerns, especially for Minnesota and Indiana, although Wisconsin did weigh in, and some other states did as well. At that point, she did talk about the extension for the deadline, and we talked a little bit about how to do that. They're going to come up with more direction about exactly how we do that, so we don't know all the particulars, although we do at least know that we can extend the deadline. She also did talk about all the issues that the superintendent talked about, which probably should chat a little bit about today as well. But I think that the fact that we have the opportunity to work until September of 2022 gives us an opportunity to really look a lot at what we need to do, the relationship and the partnership between K-12 and higher education in terms of preparation. But there are some resolved issues, that aside, and I think the superintendent talked about one. One is testing experience. I think if I had to indicate what my take from her that day was, is there's a sliver of opportunity to perhaps look at tested experience. As the superintendent said, you're allowed to use tested experience outside of the classroom. So for example, if you were an accountant, and you could actually carry that experience and it could be recognized as a basis on which it could be that experience could be recognized in the classroom. But what was clear is that there was not going to be grandfathering, or that at that point, tested experience in the classroom. And so we had some spirited conversations about why higher education partnership with K-12, actually looking at the experience that a teacher has, the performance of students who have been taught by that teacher, external reviews of the quality of that teacher, all the kinds of things that we think would be valuable for the higher education to be able to look at when they're looking at teachers in the high school. So I think there's a sliver, but I think we have quite a bit of work to do in that area. The other area that is one of great consternation for people is this area of discipline versus subfield. And by this I mean, it would appear, for example, if you're a high school history teacher, and Janet or Terry, please help me out, just kind of weigh in on this, because I would apologize for Ken Sauer. Ken had a death in his family, so that's the reason he's not with us today. But this whole concept of discipline versus subfield is very, very difficult to navigate. What that would mean is, unless you had your 18 credit hours in the very specific subfield that you would be teaching dual credit, it would not meet the criteria. And so you can imagine the challenge that that's going to be. So, in fact, this is an area that, because this has a crosswalk with, this is not just about dual credit, recall. This also impacts instructors who are in the higher ed arena. We think this has an impact on them as well. In fact, that issue was brought up by some higher ed folks at the MEC meeting. This would have an impact on them. So we obviously need much more clarification on this discipline versus subfield, and I think we're going to continue to work on that. I know that the lieutenant governor and the superintendent talked about that when they testified before HLC. So I think, there are some of those areas that we really need to work on. The other unresolved area that we talked about last week, the last time we met, was really what kind of data do we have out there that could actually help us as we go forward. We're going to need this data because that will be part of the basis on which we have documentation of why we need the extension, for example, as well as other reasons. And in your packet, you have some additional information that we have put together. Thank you to everyone who worked on that, Terry, probably Janet in particular, and others in the room. This is the document I'm looking at right now in your packet. And this actually shows what our challenge is in the This shows which schools or campuses are providing dual credit now, and then how that breaks out in terms of the preparation that we have. You will see by looking at this that we have about 28.7% have a master's with the 18 credits in the subject area. Those people are golden. Those are the easy ones. And then we have 48.6% who have a master's with 18 credits in subject areas. Without, that doesn't put in my document correctly here, without the 18 credit hours in there. So that means these are the ones who, they could have a master's in education policy, they could have a master's in a lot of areas, counseling, but they don't have the 18 credit hours in the particular subject matter. Forget the subfield even on top of that. So this is a huge challenge. And then we have 6.6% who have no master's but some graduate work, different challenge for those. And then we have 16.1% who have no master's and no graduate work who are teaching dual credit. So, and then it breaks it down by, so you can see by the campus what percent it's there. And so it's easy for you to look at this, where our challenge is. And it's different for different institutions, no doubt about that. Keep in mind, based on the information we provided the last time, and John Newby, please correct me if I'm not right about this, but I think about 70% of the dual credit is through Ivy Tech?
Yes.
Yes, close to 70%. So it's not surprising that their percentage would be higher in terms of the number who need to be, that they're providing such a large percentage of the dual credit. Any questions about any of this? We tried to sort of bring you up to date where we left off last time, particularly with the data, the action we've taken with Higher Learning Commission. I think we provided that. So before we go on to the next part, I'd like to just sort of stop here and see kind of what your response are to questions you might have. Yes.
One question. You mentioned that in accounting degree specifically. So someone that has an undergraduate accounting degree and an MBA, the equals would not be eligible to teach an accounting course.
According to one representative at HLC that did provide that information to a campus here in Indiana, they said yes, that would, but again, we've not.
That would or wouldn't?
It would. the MBA with, and the accounting background. But that's one response, and that's our problem, is we really need to see this in print.
The MBA would include 18 hours.
No, we're not, right, no, we're not. And so that's where we've had some variation in what's been told.
This is part of the problem. It's kind of been a moving target because we've asked questions and we talked to different people. Even when we were at the MEC meeting, Barbara was there and the person who's writing a lot of this was there. And we would ask a question and she would look to him and then it was sort of, we were trying to figure out. So I think this is still in a state of flux even for them.
And even column number 1 here, where it says 18 hours in content area, we're not really sure that all of those content areas are the right content areas for the subfields that they're teaching.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to verify, I think I know the answer, but this does not include what has been accepted out of the rule.
Oh, CTE?
No.
Yeah, this is just.
Although there is even a little.
This is just for liberal arts.
Right. Yes, but there is a little question that we're CTE was excluded from this, although there are some, whether there's some general education or some liberal arts courses within CTE. We're not exactly sure, so we're trying to get clarification. We've been told, they sort of told us in a blanket way, CTE was not included. I'm almost afraid to ask for clarification, but.
They also use that non-occupational, which is, that's when business comes into play. And people have been asking about business because they've been using non-occupational courses. But then they used an example of business in one of the guidance points. So again, that's another clarification.
And I want to make it clear that we have the commission, and I'm sure the superintendent would agree with me, we are in no way stepping back anything to do with quality in terms of dual credit instruction. What we want to do is provide ways to show that quality is being provided in dual credit, and then we have the justification for doing that as we go forward. We know that students who didn't have dual credit, and in fact, as you will recall when we showed you the policy that Indiana had already put together, which really ranked us second out of the 19 states in terms of the rigor of our program by HLC. We tried very hard to, we said, the assessments have to be the same, the curriculum has to be the same, so we put in place, walls around this to make sure that that is the case. But we do believe that and that what we're talking about are exceptional cases where you can demonstrate proficiency that provides value and rigor in ways that we've been doing this before. And so that's what we're going to try to do. We're trying to drive that balance between what we think is ensuring quality and rigor, and the commission has been committed to doing that by following how dual credit students do. We know that their GPA is higher. We recall the data we provided the last time. We now know that their persistence in college is higher than those who haven't had dual credit. And we're committed to following completion. So don't get me wrong here. We are not in any way asking HLC to take a step back from academic rigor and quality. What we're trying to do is have some common sense and some documentation of what that actually means. Senator Cruz, did you have to do that?
So this chart, these are the teachers, is this reflective of the number of students that they teach? Or is there a bigger portion of the teachers teaching more students that have no master's and no graduate work, or master's with 18 hours? Do they teach more of these classes in the high school? Is there any kind of
Wait, over here at the side you see estimated number of students taught by faculty in columns 2 through 4. Now that would be, it's a total though.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a way to, I think what as I understand what you're saying is you want to put those teachers attached to those students.
Yeah, like say, under Ivy Tech, no master's, no graduate, 393 professors, I would call them. And they have 717 with, so that the 393 actually teach more students than they do the 717 teach. If they teach twice as many, they don't have any masters and no graduate studies. They teach twice as many students.
I think you're going to, just anecdotally, as I got cross-eyed looking at these numbers, I'm fairly certain that we could say that the students per faculty member reflected here is generally going to be pretty close to the same.
Despite time, I forget which corporation last time said they would lose all their, they wouldn't have any teacher able to teach under the new guidelines from last meeting. So I don't know if that meant that that's a bigger problem than we think or not.
Yes, that's not from
Yeah, from the high
These are only college, but I thought the high school teachers had to be approved by college.
they do.
Does this include high school teachers being approved by college?
Yes, yes, yes. And so the far right column, these are the number of students that would be impacted right now. If things were in place right now, that would not have masters with the 18 hours. It would be the number of students that would be affected by that. Or we wouldn't be able to offer them courses, we wouldn't have teachers available.
Number
Do have-
one is not included in that. So the teachers that are high qualified are not included in that last paragraph.
There are some high schools that are going to be impacted to a greater degree than other high schools. Because you might find some high schools where all of their teachers fit under category 1, for example. But as a general rule of thumb, the number of students per faculty member reflected here, at least for Ivy Tech, is going to be generally about the same, but it will vary by high school.
And I work for Boyle Township, we have 25 teachers and only 15 have credentials, and so that would impact 10.
And do you know, Dina, how many of those, which of the category, the 10 that don't fit in, do you know where they are?
I don't.
And I think another thing that will impact is retirements to the next 5 years, that number's going to
More
drop.
older teachers have masters than the younger teachers.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we're about 40%, but in about 5 years, that'll be more like 20 to 50%.
Well, let me just be blunt, I don't think the decision will be to move away from the 18 credit hours and the subject matter. I think it will be how we work through that in other ways to acknowledge the kinds of things that we're talking about here. Did you read it that way when we spoke to them? Yeah. Yes.
I use proportion to answer something. It breaks down roughly like this. So about roughly 24%, actually 22% of our course student enrollments fall into category 1. We skew slightly higher in category 2 in terms of enrollments. So, but overall, this is a pretty, this looks like, in terms of enrollments, breaks down, follows the teacher breakdown pretty clearly. But a quick follow-up. And I know this might introduce some notions for later on in our conversation. I went back and looked at the teachers we had 7 years ago in the IU dual credit program. We had 399 teachers roughly 7 years ago. Of those 399, 55 of them are the 540 with us today. So 70+%, 77% roughly over the past 7 years we've lost to attrition. So Janet's point is very well made. The retirement or just shifting to a different position, not retirement, but getting a master's in counseling or administration, moving up. These are really great teachers we're working with. We want them to be successful in whatever career path they choose. So first, the enrollments do follow this basically, I think. And then B, I don't think we can't understate how important the attrition issue is.
Other thoughts? There is a pie chart that shows us, in a visual way, the numbers that you see on this chart, overall percentages that might be helpful. And I'm really not trying to drive you crazy. Look, in my finger, I've got things upside down a little bit, so if you may have to turn this around a little. So, any other comments before we go on to looking at, we're on this, we keep talking about this parallel important track. One is how do we deal with this in an immediate way, and then how do we look at the teacher preparation issue going forward? John?
Commissioner Lubbers, I would just point out, I believe the pie chart is not labeled correctly.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know, you can match it up with the chart we've been looking at, you can see which goes with
Then
which.
let's just put an X to the pie chart.
That's fair enough.
Thank you, thank you. We wouldn't want this to go out and be decided. Yeah, right. Yeah.
But yeah, 2 of them are flipped.
We put this in the last minute this morning, so just ignore that. You have all the right numbers here, so. Okay, any other? We're gonna, at the end, after Janet makes her presentation, we're gonna come circle back around again and talk about next steps. So I think there'll be a part of this discussion. Vince?
We have this sheet from last, I
total number of credits?
Sure I do.
How about the slide that talks about the
And it was, I think it was a spreadsheet similar to this. Total number of credits earned.
300,000 or something.
Yeah, it was a big number. Yeah, that number is big. I think I moved it, but figure out what percentage of the existing record
Total statewide dual credit courses offered is 3,409. Total advantage paid for teaching dual credit, 2,908. Is that what you're talking about?
The total number of students and then the total number of credits earned last year or awarded.
Oh, yes.
Awarded last year.
That's that one, each one is so it's gonna be hard to
That's good, this.
Right.
Well, if you have other data requests, I'm not sure we can always get the information, but if you'll just let us know other data requests that you have, and we'll try to see if the information's out there, and if it's there, we'll find it. Sometimes we just don't have it. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Janet. I know you all know Janet from Cell, and she works with the commission in all these areas, especially with early college models and other dual credit, and is going to just, staying on top of all the different kinds of options we have in terms of teacher preparation, although she said she's trying because it's actually, the good news is people are responding. So we're finding that colleges and universities and high schools are coming to the table with suggestions and ideas of things that they think they would like to do. So this may not be an exhaustive presentation today, but it certainly is our best read at what we think is going on right now.
I actually would like this to be interactive and not just Janet sharing things. So what I'd like to do is present a few ideas that have come across our desks at Cell, and also from some of the meetings that we've had with our early college network folks, as well as our readings across different newsletters, newspapers, etc. So I'd like to categorize this into three different areas: higher education, K through 12, and then what are possible solutions that might take legislative or state agency action. So if we could, let's start with our higher education as the first bucket. And I would like to, again, give a few ideas and then also see any other ideas that might be surfacing in my overview. So please feel free to jump in with other ideas here. I think one of the first things that we need to do as a state would be to get an inventory of what universities, public and private, are ready to go with graduate coursework for teachers. We have a number that have graduate programs on the books, but they have gone wrong. Since the licensing requirements changed a number of years ago for teachers to get masters, many universities stopped offering the graduate work. So how many are going to revive? What disciplines will these be in? And how many will be online, face-to-face, hybrid, different types of offerings? So I think that's one of the first things Ken has talked about too, that we need to do. Questions, comments, and just wave at me as we go on any of these things.
You're going to be private and public office.
Because both have offerings, and I think we need to have all of the options out there for our teachers to choose from.
So they are offering a master's in education.
There's lots of master's in education. I want to say there's 24 programs, I think, maybe possibly more. You will all know that better. But in terms of the 18 credit hours, there's that content too. And several universities are talking about we have a curriculum instruction master's, but we're going to change it so that we can offer that 18 hours of content within that. Now, will it be in all the subjects we need? Probably not. So that's what we need, an inventory of who can do math, who can do the sciences, who can do English, etc. So, yes.
Yes, Jen, before I go here, I'm going to question Thompson, who was a physics teacher. He was sharing with me, this is when he was teaching, that he did not have a master's degree, he had 36 hours. Because he said there is no master's program, at that point, I'm not sure, that there's no master's program for physics if you've taken it like a section. So if you want these teachers to be able to teach it, the other thing you're gonna have to find out is what kind of time they can't be a full-time student requirement.
That's right. Very nice, sir.
I shared with Commissioner Lubbers, I was up in Kokomo this fall with some of my members, and this was that year the council first met. And he's, multiple years teacher of the year up in Peru. He listed for me hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of scholarships he helped kids get over his career. He's a fine arts dual credit. And there's no way to do online for a lot of that. So I think it's an area that we, let's not forget the scope of the curriculum.
And I think science labs will be another challenge too, because you can always do labs online, do some things, but not the depth that is needed in the master stuff, so that is one suggestion I would have off the top. Another one is, we mentioned this briefly at the last meeting we had, but there's a project called the Ohio Appalachian Collaborative. And it's a very exciting project. It's, the Tell for Kids is one of the funders of this, and they also have some outside funding beyond that. And this is for the eastern portion of Ohio that is very rural, and it's all Appalachian in several counties. And they realized a number of years ago that they did not have many students going on to college, nor did they have much dual credit being offered. So this is a project where RFPs were issued and universities could bid for this. And they only offered 5 different subject areas that they wanted preparation for teachers: math, English, social studies, the sciences, and I want to say communications. And so 5 different universities in the state bid on this. They had to develop online course delivery. And they also had to try to compress the course delivery into 8 or 9 week modules. They've been able to do that. They've had tremendous track record. They also provide a lot of professional development for the teachers. They're going to be dual credit instructors. And their high school graduation rates have gone up. Of course, their dual credit accomplishments are going up. But it's been a wonderful way for a group of universities to work together and serve a whole region of the state. And I think that would be a wonderful idea to do something similar for here in Indiana. We have many folks that have pieces of this, but if we could package it, it would be very impressive to do something like that. Questions on that one? There's some great literature out there on it. They present at conferences and have done wonderful things in terms of supports for teachers as they prepare to make the dual credit instruction. All right. Another idea I'm going to call on my colleague, Mary. Something that SEL and the Independent Colleges of Indiana work on is a project called STEM Teach. And Mary, I want to share a little bit about that.
We've been fortunate enough at independent colleges to receive 2 grants from the state. The first one we received 2 years ago now, and we used it to improve the instructional skills and knowledge of K-12 teachers in the STEM area. We reapplied for another grant round of funding this time, and our proposal is primarily targeted towards helping dual credit teachers get their credentialing using the infrastructure and the model that we put together last time. Last time we had approximately 16 of our 31 private colleges and universities offer these classes. Teachers were able to take them tuition-free. They got a stipend for their books, and then they also got several $100 completion award when they finished. We are going to be using that same model, but targeting it more towards dual credit credentialing in the STEM areas. We had our first, we heard, private we got a grant, and we had our first regional meeting up in the northern part of the state. Last Tuesday, we had 8 campuses there. We're having our second regional meeting tomorrow at the University of Indianapolis, and I think we have about 10 campuses represented there. So we are going to try to have courses offered during the second semester. Now that's a little bit tight because many schools have already done their registration, But those who offered graduate courses in science and math and STEM areas in the first iteration of this grant, many of them, or some of them are saying they can be ready. And others say they can probably be ready to do something in the spring in a compressed form. And Cell Unity is our partner in this grant, and we have more demand than we could fulfill in the first round. I think all told, we had 726 courses completed, over 700. Some teachers took, more than one. And we had to stop the grant a semester early because we depleted all of our funds. So teachers do know about it. They've been calling, they've been writing, so we're just trying to get it off the ground as quickly as possible.
And to piggyback on Mary Ellen's comments, a few things that are different this time besides the concentration on dual credit. We built in some incentives for teachers beyond what we had. Currently, first one had $400 completion award. This time it's $500, and then there's an incentive for dual credit completion, credentialing completion, because we want people to do this quickly. And so if somebody participates in STEM teaching, earns 6 credits for dual credit credentialing, another $100. So if they do 12, we'll receive 200, and then if they do 18, it's 300 more. So they could potentially pick up another $600 on top of each course's incentive and completion award. So we hope that helps build, they'll just keep it up pretty quickly. Our challenge is to try to help the universities participating to create more online delivery. We absolutely need more online to get across the state. And so we have course development funds in there, but it's only for this first semester because we need to have the courses ready to go as fast as we can. We also have talked about having an instructional designer that helps some of the campuses develop and engage in online instruction. We don't want talking heads, we want interactive quality courses. And our northern campuses told us they don't need that, we're good if we have that. Okay, so we'll find out what the central campuses want to say tomorrow. They'll tell us a little bit more about that. But hopefully that'll be starting here in January and February.
Do you have an application from Cell?
Yes, we have a website, and that's what's been wonderful about this collaboration. There's one place to apply and register. Students do not have to go through all the different registrations at the campus. It's all in streamlined, so they just go through one portal for this. So it's very good.
And do you know when is that application period open?
As soon as we can get some courses up and ready. So I'm going to say it's going to be end of December, probably, but we'll send out things marketing. And last time, 2 years ago when we started this, we only marketed the first semester, and after that it was written out. So again, the ones that were already taken, they keep asking. We did have, I thought this was impressive, we had one person in the first round take 22 credits, graduate credits, and we had 2 people earn 15. So it can be done, and we only offered 4 semesters, so that was people really pedal to the metal. Other questions?
We're going to have to figure out some kind of incentive with teachers pay things so low, and then require teachers to pay out of their pocket.
That's why we try to build in this win-win. And the win-wins go to the institutions as well in this particular project, because tuition is paid to the institution, a portion of the salary for the instructor as well as benefits, and then course development funding is back to the institution and instructors. The next thing is what are we going to do for English and academics? This is the STEM subjects. That's just offered as a model for something perhaps we can create here in the state that can help with this. Other questions? Another model that I was told about recently at the NASEP conference, and NASEP is the National Association of Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships, was something that Montana does. Montana is as you know, very rural state, and they make a comment about having 2.5 more cows than people in the state per person. But they do something called credit for credit, and I thought this was a very intriguing approach. They teacher teaches a dual credit course, and let's say it's for 3 credits, then in turn, they receive a voucher good for 3 credits, graduate credits, that they can go cash in at the university. And they have found that, and they don't have to use it personally, they may give it to their son or daughter, they may give it to their husband, if they want to go to school, they can give it to a teaching colleague, and some have given it to high school students that are graduating and going on. So they call it the Credit for Credit Waiver Program. That is a good incentive for teachers who are already credentialed and approved. That's a neat incentive. But if they haven't figured that out in terms of how to help those who need it, the only way that helps the uncredentialed teachers is their colleague who is credentialed and hands it off to them. But it was an intriguing approach, and they had universities agree that they would accept this voucher from the program. So that was something that's been set up. Other ideas for you are listed on a handout in the packet on the left-hand side. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is it's called Teacher Credentialing Ideas for Solutions. And put it on both sides. And so I've talked about the first 3, but then some other things that ideas that have been floating both at our early college network meetings and in other meetings with folks have been setting up cohort models very similar to what education administration programs do, where a cohort goes through together. Perhaps that's done cohort of English teachers, cohort of science teachers, so that they have each other to rely on. Another thing is looking at, I don't think we really have designated service areas for all of our higher ed institutions, but trying to think about distance education as a way to deliver at least Gen Ed core courses. Could that be something where the institutions offer those courses, and so instead of needing a high school dual credit teacher, distance ed is the way it's delivered. And so it addresses the needs for the students at this time, because we're worried about the teachers and their need to, but we also need to worry about our students that are in the pipeline, and what are we going to do in the meantime here to make sure dual credit is available to these kids. So that is one way to look at distance ed from the campus that can be offered out to schools in their area. That's kind of centralized there, and then the credit for credit. And then the master's programs that contain the 18-hour sequence, as we mentioned earlier, that several universities are starting to think about this, is how do we make that stream of the 18 credits be stronger in either a master's program in education, and several have asked their HLC reps, will that work? And they said yes. And they don't have it in writing yet, I don't think, but I think they are going to pursue that they get the actual permission that this will count, even though it's an education degree, that they have 18 credits in math or whatever, that would work in terms of this requirement. Questions, comments?
I'd just say the timing of that can be very important, because, schools that need to get their teachers credentialed, it's going to take some time.
It is.
And, to enroll in a program, they have to know the approved program that they can enroll in. So, just timing is critical.
Well, let's look at K through 12 in terms of things. We try to generate several different categories within this, and a lot of this came from a meeting in September of the Early College Network. We had over 150 people attend, and we broke them up into groups, and they were lively groups. They had lots to say. And part of it was bemoaning this whole challenge with the dual credit credentialing. But then we moved people to brainstorming. What are some ideas we can get at? So, of course, K through 12 people, they did think of higher ed things, but they very much thought of what impacts us from the district level, or that the state could help at the district level. So first were incentives that districts could offer, and some districts are already doing these things. Paying teachers a stipend for teaching a dual credit course. I've seen as high as $2,000 by one district for each dual credit course that a teacher offers, instructs. And if you teach 2 or 3 of those, that's a nice additional stipend for your paycheck. other is to pay for the graduate coursework for the teachers. Haven't seen as much of that, but that's one. But these incentives are difficult for some of our districts that are already struggling with their current budget. So that's where we're going to need help down the line to make this more equitable across the board for our school districts. When we looked that up for the STEM Teach project, and they were pretty much in line with each other, that was surprising. The top dogs, like another Dane or Rose Coleman, that I think they were getting some like 1,500, 1,800 credit, and it depends on the
One credit.
and then all the way down to $400 in credit. So we use $800 as our high average for that. But it's still a chunk of change. We look at $800, that's a lot. This is also a rare one, but providing a release period in the high school teachers' teaching schedule to work on their graduate work while at school. So be that if it's an online course that they can do anytime, anywhere, that might be a way to do that, and or to let them do the coursework while there. Including graduate work as a positive part of performance-based evaluation, part of professionalism, part can also be a slight incentive, I would say. It's not so as far as the monetary. And then some districts have talked about there needs to be a commitment back from a teacher. If I pay for your master's work or your graduate work, you need to commit to staying in this district 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, et cetera. So some districts are setting up those kinds of arrangements.
The teacher evaluation, the student test, it gets complicated in terms of longevity decision.
It does. Depends on how they rate.
Anybody have any experience with any of these kind of work? Jason?
We just started, but again, we've written into the contract 5-year commitment.
And do you also pay a stipend?
We do. And it just started, so we're waiting to see proof programs.
And is your community foundation, do you have some money for this?
They have come up with some of the funding for early college, but not for this.
Okay.
Are you using Title II money?
We have not, but we have talked about reallocating some Title II. You know, there's a catch there, I mean, because you have to reallocate, we're not going to get more Title II money, so that's been a concern.
What is it called? If something is required to each employee
Repay
the entire amount,
the entire amount.
prorated over 5
Yeah, teacher asked
I want to
you.
put out beforehand.
The program amount.
The program.
Yeah.
We agree with that.
Yeah.
There's starting to be a bit of a, I don't want to say a bidding war yet, but there definitely are some teachers being lured to other districts that can pay them these stipends or can pay them a higher salary. Smaller high schools don't want high school, very small up in Northwest school district. They lost 3 of their early college teachers because they're and brought them on teacher salary, and so it's all about, I think it's a semester last year, where we made other districts.
And that's a concern not only within school districts, but I think also if you're talking about back to the physics grad work or the chemistry grad work, you know, we may lose it in the private industry as well. So that's a concern. What those programs look like. It will be 8.
On to incentives to districts and Superintendent Ritz has already referred to the Title II, that most school districts have some allotment for professional development, and some of that usually is Title II. So we're thinking, how do we use the funds we have for that?
And I'll add to that, so at the state level, we get some Title II monies MSBA is getting reauthorized, no child left behind, and part of the components of that also is expanding what Title II money is continuing to So I think we have some flexibility with that, at the state level as well as at the local level, as to how that might be utilized to help out. Every little bit helps, of course, yes.
So, maybe for we're thinking about the relationship with higher ed and the only grade institutions we have in the state. Obviously, those 18 hours don't have to come from the same institution. Okay, so thinking rather than one institution creating an entire program and trying to provide across the state, how do we work together to create a program? Say, here's 18 hours in this discipline offered. We have a number of courses being offered around the state. Bring those together and create a program for teachers. Right? It doesn't make sense to me that we would create 25 new programs across multiple disciplines. And just use the resources we have now and see what we can create.
I think you probably could put together several different degree paths right there.
Sure, there's some academics who's going to master's degree. They just take the 18 hours in content. Some agree on what we charge teachers, and let's find the lowest cost model we can, and make it available.
The second item under the incentives of districts is really something that serves right now, and that is school districts have found that if they offer dual credit and or other college program, that this makes them more marketable, more competitive with their neighboring districts. Other schools in the area, be it private or charter, and it tends to improve their AUF accountability score given college career readiness aspects. So that's nothing new, that's not a new cost or anything like that, but that's just a reality that is there. So it's kind of leading to why we want to keep dual credit still operating here in the state. Again, cooperative arrangements like this was referring to is we've had several counties talk to us about what if we have a dual credit teacher in our building that can do the chemistry. Is there a way that we can offer to the others in the county or to business education? Again, that's cooperation and being aware that we have and same thing with having an in-person perhaps at a site. This is difficult in small rural areas because the distance gets in the way. But some talked about, well, there's 3 of us that are neighbors, and you can have one teacher 7:30 in the morning offer this class and have kids all come into this. So some are talking to each other about ways to do that. And then another audience we have for being dual credit teachers are recently retired instructors. I know Center Grove, where I recently worked, has hired a couple of retired teachers now. They've had to negotiate the schedule. These retired teachers kind of like being off now. So they work in terms of having a block schedule, and they come every other day, and they like that. Where they set up on Tuesday, Thursday this semester, and then they see Friday that semester, and still have some free time there. But that's been a great way for them to fill in some gaps on their conference there. So that's my view.
I want to be clear on this as well. So you're looking at a cooperative. So it appears that almost half of our teachers teaching dual credit in the rural arts area have a master's program.
Have a master's
So
degree.
it's 18 hours of content.
Yes, yes.
So you start, so like, there is something there we could serve as almost half of it.
That- And then the last area would be thinking about state policy, legislative, or state agencies, and there we might have our own letters to those intermediaries. But again, I think the commission's already working on this, assessing how many dual credit instructors that we have in this chart within where is the most for this does, and how do we get the word out to them about what is available. Another idea that's been floated is offering a loan program, a low-cost, low-interest loan program that helps teachers earn a master's quickly in 2 years,
a new field or something, and they don't. This is what we're trying to work through right now. What happens if you, it's a different issue than what we're having today, but it is sort of all about how you design programs to meet the goal, which is to have people in the classroom teaching what you want them to teach, but also having fun.
So are they getting a loan from the pay for it and then actually paying over time? Or are they,
We don't give loans, we give scholarships, we're not in the loan business. I think it's
Your teacher program, I think at least had a nursing program that was done that way, so there have been a couple of systems which need to think of these design programs, what's the best way to get to the goal, which is to really make sure that you're getting to the right people who really going to be in the classroom. I think this is a little different issue because this is people who are already in the classroom and trying to do it, get them to go to really do what they want to do.
If we did loans though, that would be just like, a grant is hard to take a grant back, that's part of the problem. You have to start with a loan, and they sign an agreement to repay it, and you have some ability to collect it, but a grant is a little different.
yeah, because you say you have a loan, and then you're paying each year over a 5-year period. Well, if that stops, you start paying your loan.
It's my no way, they have the loan, and the state that agrees to pay the loan over time. I think for the federal programs, for instance, you stay in the public sector for a decade, and then all of a sudden, you have to start paying that tax. So, we need to create structures on that.
I think the reason I put it on the table is not in particular this issue as much as how we actually look at what we do that has the best opportunity to actually get teachers to have their credentials and actually do what we do. Understand that we're going to have limited amount of funds to do it, but how do we use those funds and what would be the best way? And what we're offering today are, it's a list of suggested ideas, some of which have never been approved. So when you think about that.
I'm also worried about existing programs and leverage. And, so in the federal loan program, there is a repayment for those programs who are nonprofit and public sector jobs. I think that repayment is, so if that's a big, what could be like that, and just promote it. Okay, here's an opportunity to enroll in this program, and here's a repayment, and this will be okay. We don't have to use any of our funds. We just need to know details about the federal repayment. I know as a nonprofit, we promote that repayment to all of our teachers. Anyone has student loans that are working in the nonprofit sector can apply for that repayment. And that will work for us.
We just to hire it, and then allow them to maybe disperse it as they saw fit or as students complete it. Coursework, that way there's not a lot of hands in it.
And these are the kinds of discussions we need to have sort of part of our next step to sort of look at that, zero in on. And for those of you who are, practitioners, especially in K-12 sector, what do you think would actually impact, decisions about, what they would do? What's going to be the most?
On this chart, in column 2, do you know a number of how close they might be to the 18 hours? Because we're talking as if they need all 18. Like in my case, I need 6 hours without the experience. I just would wonder how many were that close to 18. We might, in some cases, be talking like need 6 hours, in some cases, we might be talking below 18.
That should have come up when we've been trying to figure out if you can, and to figure it out because it does make a significant difference in terms of.
We're talking 1,200 people, but they really only need 6 hours, which is a big difference compared to 1,200 people needing 18 hours.
We talked about this on Friday when the credit coordinators came and I had a call with them. And that was one of the things that Ken did tell them is we really need that detail. I got it from some of the institutions that are pretty much broken down as to the discipline, if that to discipline the subject, but discipline the number of hours. And the comment that Ken made, I think is very valid. We may be down to that detailed level for EHLC applications. So we've already asked them to start pulling those numbers together because we do feel like it will give us a much better landscape of exactly where we are with the teachers.
Do we know how many teachers we have that aren't teaching dual credit classes that have their masters or master's qualification? That we could typically leverage dual credit courses?
So our dual credit, we can figure that out, or we have to find another way to go rely on some of our associations actually on their.
Well, the schools themselves should have that information. They have that information for their employees. So we also get into a topic of what's incentivized master's degrees in themselves. And, you know, I was just last night at a dinner, the teachers said, you know, well, we didn't get our master's degrees because it doesn't make you be portable. Because you can't go to another district and get hired, it's gonna cost too much money to hire. So master's degrees are not valued in terms of portability, nor in terms of, you know, even if you went and you get your credentialing here, then what's going to happen as a result of you getting that? Am I guaranteed to be teaching dual credit courses, or am I going to be able to go to another one that may not need a dual credit person, but I have a master's degree now, and you already have people teaching dual credit English? So it's a very complicated piece because we haven't really incentivized the master's degree itself. So it's a topic we're going to have to, I see it down here in the policy, legislative, some work that we have to think about that because we haven't incentivized having additional education. And a great many teachers have not pursued it or are they thinking about pursuing it.
I was just gonna say, you know, the low-hanging fruit is probably rests in columns 1 and 2, but that just gets us barely to half. And then the next question comes, well, then how do we do the service delivery? We talk about online and virtual. And first, I do believe there are practitioners out there who, you know, believe that that impacts quality. And so, you know, we started this conversation by saying we don't want to, you know, reduce quality. So, you know, it's just more people talking.
Commissioner, I want us to be careful not to conflate the issues. One issue is what do we do to entice people to do work? Another issue is how do we get people appropriately credentialed to do it? Last time we talked about, it sounds like there's been some research around the discipline areas and where we see the greatest need. I guess I'm still in that space where I know a tsunami is coming. I just want to know if it's east or west. And so is that science and mathematics? Is that in the humanities? Where do we have the greatest need? Because it seems to me the biggest issue before us is credentialing. I think schools, both higher ed and K-12, have to figure out with the legislature, I think, this whole question of incentivizing people to actually come and do the work. My concern ultimately is, even if you wanted to do the work, what is the pathway to getting it? And certainly if the higher learning commission is willing to stretch that window for us, I do think we still have to say, what are those pathways? And prioritize the disciplines that we're going to attack first. Because I just don't see a way to prioritize everything. So what are the biggest issues that matter to women in southern, rural, and urban? And then how do we create, I think, like I said this last time, short burst kinds of ways to get to prevention. And I don't want to step on the toes of the higher ed folks, but how do we create those easy access programs to get you to a credential? How do we create those summer workshop experiences where somebody can leave their K-12 post in June, perhaps even go in residence for a month or two, and obtain those 18 semester hours so that we don't find ourselves in a place where, from a higher ed standpoint, we can't really push the limit. So I know that most of the issues are important, but I just think that we probably better focus on credentialing. I feel like incentivizing folks to get in and do the work is a play that's already happening relative to teacher shortage. I think that's part of it. The bigger issue for us is how do we get these people credentialed in those pathways?
And Marcus, you're right. And I think the first thing that Jana said that we needed to be doing is to see what the university graduate program pieces are gearing up to offer. What does that look like and how can we get that going?
John, do you have any data on subject areas and disciplines, at least for
We're getting ready to drill down into our numbers and find out more precisely what category each of these instructors fall into. But anecdotally, is kind of taking the numbers that we have and looking at all of the other information that we have. For Ivy Tech at least, you would take care of about 50% of these currently or soon to be non-credentialed folks. About 50% of them would be in mathematics and language arts. Science is a little more difficult because it gets into that whole subfield.
50% is in science and, math and language arts. What percentages of that is math and what percentage is language arts? Still looking at?
That's going to be a pretty even split.
Okay.
But we'll know more in a few weeks, but that's kind of the first out of at least for us.
Okay. Jen, do you have a couple others of
Just
the
a
policy?
couple others. The policy, that's a nice general bucket there, which is many things we touched on here, but might be which of those areas do we focus on, how do we go about this in terms of working with our legislators as well. Lots of work there. And then the last one just came up at our network meeting back in September. A number of Q12 people spoke pretty eloquently about we need one go-to place that is the clearinghouse that we give information on offering the courses, when are they being offered, how do I get credentialed, all that kind of information that needs to serve both K-12 and higher ed. So that was just an interesting concept. So those are just some ideas, but I'm sure this group can think of other permutations.
Nominate Excel, do that.
Sure.
Other thoughts about this portion of our discussion? Yes, John?
There's a comment at the bottom of the page here that these having that use the instructor of record, is that something that is all usable as an alternative?
I think it's only a big conflict in that capacity. Quite a lot of I don't know if you do it on a large scale, but if you do it on a small scale. Essentially, yes.
Say when you look at the instructor, they would have 18 hours in the content area, so as far as the higher learning commissions, they're meeting criteria, and that's what I'm asking, are they?
It would meet the HLC criteria, but what they wouldn't meet would be the NASA criteria, the National Alliance for Concurrent Global Partnership, or the Indiana Dual Credit Review. Because that is going back to the idea that it is the high school teacher who is the teacher of record. And so I said, I think the folks that are involved with that program and how we had a discussion about that not too long ago. And the other one that was, it probably is not scalable, nor would it be affordable because you are using college faculty. So it's really this kind of pilot program with very small level, but not to a level where it could be expanded, was their comment. And I think they've been very involved with these several years. Lisa Goodnight and Nancy Gabrielle were commenting on that.
Okay, well, let's move to the last part of our agenda today, which is really to talk about proposed next steps. And Mark has indicated in his last comment that, you know, we have whatever's going to be done by address the HLC and then whatever is the credentialing part of this. And I'm going to turn to Representative McNamara and Senator Cruz for just a moment and Representative Bain too, I'm sure is aware of this, to see whether or not he can bring us up to date on what's happening at the legislative level. Resolution. Anything you want to talk about?
I've had several conversations with the president of the Higher Education Commission. It's really not budging on a whole lot of things and not really caring about the detrimental effects on the state. And for me, it came from several levels of thinking through it from a legislative perspective of our state sovereignty and being able to actually control what happens in our state for our education policy and having an independent board of elected people actually usurping or succeeding policies of our state. So I started down the lines of drawing a bill that would basically hold harmless our universities and realized that that probably wasn't going to get us very far. So moved to doing a current resolution. I'm going to author it in the House first, and then it'll be sent over to Senator Cruz. Several parts of it, basically using data and looking at what is good about data in the end. These are provided from Teresa Lubbers and a bunch of other folks, but basically talking about the successes that we have had with dual credit and in a nice way, I guess I'll use the word condemning the HLC's policy for trying to, our teachers don't have any problem with accountability. Our teachers don't have any problem with being asked to do above and beyond, but what I think our biggest problem is basically having an entity that's inflexible and not understanding of what's best for us, obviously. And that's where I'm coming from. And basically putting us in a position that does harm to our common good. So our resolution is really the best avenue, I believe, and I feel that the majority of Republicans and Democrats, this is something they can sign on to, because if you're looking at it from that perspective, it's basically going to state the positives of our state, don't need to choose to do credit, and that's second in the Midwest, second in the Midwest, in distribution of dual credits. Also looking at the detrimental pieces of going back, I think it's 43,000 dual credits a year we stand to lose if our faculty is credentialed under their policies. But what I do see is each conversation, and it's kind of like we move the goalposts and try to keep up, but each conversation we have with HLC, we get a little bit further, but not necessarily more clarification. Senator Cruz, you're also to add to this. We've had some conversations.
Part of it is why should the Higher Learning Commission have more authority with our students in Indiana than we do as the state government in Indiana? So that we ought to be the ultimate authority, that Higher Learning Commission should be the ultimate authority. And so, should they be allowed to do something that is what we think is our law or not our law? And right now they're kind of saying because their group of board members say, okay, we're going to do this. Well, maybe the state of Indiana laws don't agree with that. And who supersedes there? And I think, we want to make a declaration that our state law is a higher law than a resolution by the Higher Learning Commission. I think that's kind of how the line is, who really is in charge of our children, who's in charge of our teachers. Is it the Higher Learning Commission or is it the state of Indiana?
And I think it's important for us to have this conversation in the full complexity of the issue, which is that, it is a voluntary organization. States choose to be involved in HLC on a voluntary basis. They're not required to do it, but in this sense, it's not voluntary in that your ability to have your institution qualify for federal financial aid is tied to accreditation. And so, and that accreditation was seen as the measure of ensuring that the federal government is going to provide federal dollars through Pell. They wanted some sort of an indication of that. So I think we need to be, the reality is higher education institutions can speak for themselves here, but the reality is they were going to put their students at risk of not getting federal financial aid. It's not likely to happen because they can't do that. I mean, their students need Pell dollars. And so that's not where they're going to go. So I think that the legislative representatives around the table are trying to do with this is to focus on, what we've done to commit to quality in Indiana and asking them to allow for appropriate flexibility as we discussed today. So I asked to be removed from accreditation. I think that's what the resolution is trying to do. It's a manner to recognize, the flexibility and the judgment in picking teachers who teach dual credit based on that proven record of what things we need to say. Here, what do you want to call first, and then John?
Yeah, just real quick, I think the biggest, there's a lot of big pieces to this, but I keep asking for data. We always ask our teachers, our schools, our universities to be accountable by data, and we ask for, proof of why they need this. They didn't use any consistent data or any data, as a matter of fact, when coming up with this policy. What they did is they used a survey of, well, they actually sent the survey out twice. First time they had 35 responses. The second time they sent it out, they had 500 responses, which was a 28% response rate. They're basing it off one question on the survey, which is either a yes or no question. Do you think your people teaching dual credit or higher ed level courses need to have some set of higher education? And only 62% of the 32% response rate said yes. So that in itself is a survey because they're making policy based on no outcomes or and zero on input. So they're not really looking at what the measures are behind why they're trying to do this, and they can't answer why. That's another big issue. We're trying to find out what is driving this decision and this policy, yet they don't give us the answer. The only reasonable answer is federal government, but I can only, put in my 2 cents there. But it would be nice if, you could walk the walk and use data. If we're accustomed to it in our state and we make decisions based on it, then they should as well. And that's one thing that they're not doing. And that's a frustrating thing. If we weren't producing the outcomes and there was data to prove it, then it might be a little bit different. But they're not using anything to back this policy. I'm not exactly sure how you folks were, how they arrived at it. We're sure. We're sure. So.
Our last meeting, there was some discussion to the transferability to other regional accrediting bodies. And did we get an answer whether that, usually some competition is just going to make them more receptive to our needs, but
We did check.
yeah. Have to go to a national.
We did use some of the language that SAC, which is the Southern Professors, and we put some of that language and tried to use that as a gentle way to say to HLC, this is maybe the language that we could look at to provide some of this flexibility. And we'll continue to work on that. Yes, Senator.
Just actually a very quick comment, really quick, but it's interesting that the White House announced the Pell Grants being extended to dual credit for high school students. And at least in the pilot program, we're saying that this is really important to extend Pell Grants to high school students so they can earn, and to eliminate some of the inequity that exists for students who can't afford dual credit. And this is, in my opinion, nothing but creating greater inequity for students in rural schools, difficult staff schools. We know the issues that we're facing are going to be disproportionately affected in rural
data. And if nothing else, it should erode our confidence in an accrediting agency to come up with policies without clear evidence that the policy, and I just think it's going to be more information. One other point, if we have the extension, we have 5 years potentially to study this, really come up with it. How are our students performing? And you know, what about students coming from high schools, dual credit courses by bachelor's degree teachers versus master's degree, or the 18 hours? Can we study this over the next 2 or 3 years and just see how are our students doing? And let's come up with one evidence. And maybe it validates this policy, and perhaps it doesn't. And we can come back at some point and share with us.
Well, we will certainly be doing that at the Commission for Higher Ed. We will be following our dual credit students, and we already are doing that through our college readiness reports into college, and then we're going to be following, we've been able to follow persistence, and then we'll be following completion as well. So we'll be able to do that. You know, a couple comments just in case people in the room don't know. The thing that Vince talked about with Pell, with students being allowed to use Pell for dual credit, the way the policy is written, they will be allowed for pilots. It will be done through institutions in the state. It's important for you to know that if students use their Pell for dual credit when they're in high school, it counts against the 6 years of using Pell. So it's not. Yes, yes, I'm assuming it does, because that's the way the policy is written, that if you have 6 years to use Pell, and if you use your Pell at any particular time, that counts. So I think, you know, we need to make sure that students understand that, and I don't think that message has been out there clearly at all, even though I don't know, at this point, I don't know of any Indiana institutions who have indicated to us that they're doing that. We've done a little bit of checking, we can't find anybody yet that's actually doing a pilot, which does allow us to look at the pilots in, you know, other states, and if we don't do one. So, the other thing that's important to know about dual credit is just about the policies. This policy is not just about dual credit, as HLC did it. This is about what happens in higher education as well. So the same credentials that they're talking about have to be there. So it is not, dual credit is never really mentioned in the policy. It's just that it has a disproportionate impact on dual credit. So I think it's incumbent on us to handle this in a very thoughtful way with all the considerations that are out there, because the way we're going to distinguish ourselves as a state is to actually be that way, the way that we make our presentation. And I think the comments today are entirely appropriate. But that's what I would hope is that we would be able to, you know, collectively talk about this in a way that it's almost as if at the other side you have to go, well, yes, that makes complete sense. You know, you sort of walk into a place where, yes, that makes complete sense. And I'm not sure we're there yet. And that's why I think this group is going to be so important. You know, maybe we need to think about a subset of this group working on the things that Janet presented in terms of, you know, other ideas, because we need some work in between the times that we're meeting. And so I'm not sure that, you know, trying to pick people today to do that is the right idea. What we may try to do, with your permission, is to try to find a group that actually represents a cross-section of what we have here, you know, with people who are willing to make a little bit of time in between meetings to do something, to explore what some of these other ideas of the credentialing issues would be. We need to stay on top of what's happening in the legislature. If there's any impact on House Bill 2 of what we're doing here. 1002? I'm so used to papers. Sorry. To see whether or not there's any impact of what's happening there on dual credit as well. So I think we have a meeting coming up. Somebody.
Yeah, and I had to speak today talk about it as well, so
Yeah.
I can
Any other, I also mentioned earlier, any other data requests that you have, if you would send them to me or the superintendent, and we'll see if we can answer those kinds of things. I think there were several things put on the table today that we'd like to get more information about that may be in your circles. I know John indicated that he's going to get some more information, and as a huge provider of dual credit, I think that's going to be really important as well. Any other thoughts?
Superintendent, Commissioner, I guess I'm curious about sort of the philosophical frame of higher ed providers relative to these credentialing issues, and whether or not some kind of expedited credentialing flies in the face of what they feel is really sort of their calling as a higher ed institution, which is to say, if you suggest that I could obtain 15 semester hours in physics in a 2-month accelerated program in the summer, is that something our higher ed community would be warm to orchestrating? Or is that just like not enough time to get 18 semester hours in physics or English or math or whatever we would determine down the road would be our high priority areas? And so,
There's some higher ed folks here in the room who might be willing to weigh in on this. And I mean, they're going to be bound somewhat by how the creditors come back to look at them for various reasons and they do the business. Marilyn, Dr. Ballstein?
There's a federal credit hour rule that to get 15 credits in a month would be violated if we tried to do that. You could reasonably get 6 with people expecting that would be an in-residence kind of piece where you could do, maybe a little bit of work before, a little bit of work afterwards. You could get 6 credits in a month in terms of that process, and we've done some of that before. The other piece that I'll mention, and I don't know whether John Newby's aware of this or not, but just at the last Commission Academic Affairs and Quality Committee meeting, Ball State proposed a program in secondary math which would essentially take care of the whole math piece. It's a foundational teaching in math master's degree, and within it, those who already have a master's degree could get the 18 credits. There's 18 credits in it that covers the math part. So we've already got a piece in place, and it's an online program that will get started as soon as we get approval from the commission at their next meeting to be able to deliver. So there's a variety of ways. We're looking at ways to be able to get the K through 12, the high school teachers in particular here, the programs that they need to be able to get their credentials and to meet that quality standard that's there. And we're more than willing to work on that piece, and would love to be part of conversations about some of those solutions.
Awesome. Thank you.
EDA foresees our campus is rolling out a new math. In some instances, a new master's in liberal studies, but other campuses already have master's in liberal studies, and embedding in that liberal studies framework, 18 hours in core content area, the first 2 will be hopefully available as quickly as in the summer. But broadly, it's a great question, Mark, so I'm glad you asked it this to sort of how compressed, legitimate graduate coursework can be expected to deliver. Yeah, I think Maryland, I wouldn't dispute anything Maryland can contextualize, but what we also, some of our schools and departments are also not just HLC accredited. The business school has a certain accreditation, and so there are sometimes, again, probably Vince is unhappy with it. The accreditation echo effect is sometimes but I just want to make sure before we leave, I say one more time, I feel like this is my windmill, that this is really, it's attractive to look at these. Well, the folks that have matched in the 18, the column 1, we don't have to fuss those folks, they're great. But the column 2 folks, certainly we want to attend as many of those folks as possible. But as I look at the 281 of those folks for IU's program, based on my own internal IU data, only 22.5% of those can be with me in 2022. So determining which ones of those folks to have any of you at the K-12 level or at the state level invest in, I think that's a really interesting part of the question. But more importantly, that means 77% of the folks who are going to be teaching for me in 2022, I don't know who they are yet, and they don't have a master's. And so really, for me, I hope that I don't want to ignore the need to make sure the folks we have now are we are able to maintain those we can maintain. But the folks that we don't know who they are yet, that is, I think, clearly the most complicated, but also the most important cohort to sustain, not just the numbers of dual credit offering, but more importantly, as folks have alluded to, dual credit in all the spaces we want it to be offered, in every kind of school, all the sorts of students who make sure this opportunity. So that's, I just can't underscore that. So we're working groups pulled together to focus on the next issue. That's my swing bill.
So you're trying to, don't just fill the gap, actually figure out what you're doing with this pipeline.
And quite honestly, that's the most important for my opinion. Maybe the folks who,
Other good thoughts.
What if you had a master's program for teachers that would go right after you get your 40 degree, and you somehow contract with school operations, and you are kind of extended student teacher, I don't know how else to say it. She would be under another teacher, you'd get a reduced salary, so to speak, and take the 18 hours that you need, so that it doesn't really cost. You're making money, some money, maybe not a full salary, but half salary, whatever it would be, that will help pay for those costs and living expenses. So that would give an incentive, and that teacher could have a little more experience, working with a master teacher, another teacher overseeing them, or whatever. That's just something.
Like a 5-year master program, like some schools are doing now, where you actually do a 5-year program instead of a 4-year program, and actually have some chance to make money during the 5th year while you're getting.
It was like a doctor's residence or something.
We would love for the state to fund that. I honestly, when we look nationally, there are a number of both school districts and non-traditional school organizations that do these embedded teacher residencies. Mostly though around trying to build capacity for people new to the classroom. But I think, Senator Cruz, they are getting at what you're talking about, which is building better content knowledge, because they're not sprung right into a situation where they're focused on teachers trying to learn both the pedagogy as well as the content expertise. And so if we can get something going like that, then that'd be great.
I do have a question about that, because we're actually in that area, but, and we've done this study, international, NCSL done a study, international education as well, but I don't know, my question to you is, and the way Canada does it, is you get your content area degree first, and then you get your master's degree in pedagogy. So would that count in what HLC is asking? Because they want your content area to be in 18 additional hours in. Okay, so that's one of the problems I think that they're requiring.
You'd have to get, if you did a 5-year program, your 5th year would have to have 18 credit hours in the subject matter that you were teaching as part of your master's program.
So in Canada, do they have to have a master's degree in order to teach at all?
Yes, but in Canada, what they require, they will not allow, their schools of education, first off, they have 50 for the whole country. And you get your content area, your bachelor's degree first, not in the school of education, in the school of arts and sciences, program. Then you matriculate to the school of graduate school education. Now they require 2 years, not just 1. They require 2 years of pedagogy. So, and that's really the way the rest of the world, and they're kind of using that model. Candidates to take them out of the way with that. It's been basically the way the rest of us do it.
So you don't enter the classroom until you have your master's degree.
Correct. You might do a residency. I mean, what Senator Cruz is suggesting is an internship residency is very important. You actually come out with a master's degree, then you're not bachelor's degree teaching, you're not teaching.
I think it'd be interesting as well, superintendent and principal perspective, when you are selecting a teacher to teach a dual credit course, what kind of experience are you looking for? And is it going to be a first-year teacher with a master's degree? The content area that you're going to put into a credit course, or are you looking for someone with more experience, someone that has demonstrated that success over time? And so,
I mean, how the system is set up now, it would be somebody with experience, because they would have taught for some time.
you would identify, you're probably going after your most effective teacher, or somebody with
Absolutely.
right? Yes. And so,
So we were going to have a subset of this group. Would it be enough to have two high school, 2 higher ed, 2 policymakers, or do we need a bigger group than that? I mean, do you feel comfortable punting some of the discussion about credentialing at least to a smaller group? Because we weren't really scheduled to meet again. We were talking about meeting sometime in January. I just don't think we're going to get this group together again before then. And then, of course, the legislature is in session, so we were thinking maybe a Thursday. I think you guys usually end, like sometimes maybe like 3 or so on a Thursday. We could maybe do something right after before people head home. Otherwise, I mean, Wednesdays you're going to be in committee all day, right?
Friday,
But Friday, these people have gone home on Thursday, and I know people on this group are not going to stay. If I did it, sorry, I think that's way I'm just saying,
but I'm not staying.
would you maybe stay Thursday?
Yes,
Right.
I can do that.
So we were talking about maybe January 7th or January 14th. January 7th is really, I know how crazy it is right there that first week. So I would think maybe the 14th or the week after that. So kind of think about the 14th as a possibility. And then, is there anyone who just has a burning desire to serve on this subcommittee? If I don't ask you, you're just going to be so disappointed. I staged this so that you can't even answer that question. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll just make sure, if the superintendent and I will talk about it, we'll make sure we have fair representation across and see if we can come up with a smaller group. I still think it's going to be enough for us to just do this here without people bringing to you some additional ideas. Anything else? Yes.
I just want to unearth one other big structure, since we're the issue of principal and superintendent perspective. When folks pursue a master's degree, generally it's about advancement. And in the K-12 space, advancement is really about holding a master's degree in school administration, not necessarily the content area. And so, one of the things I think we'll have to work out is either districts who commit to dual credit have to simultaneously commit to some kind of alternate pathways to administration that are not just a traditional principles program, but maybe there's some blending of that, or an embedded kind of content master's degree in education that also gets you the administrative licensing. So I just want to put on the table that for years I think there's been this kind of, you got to pick a path. You're either going to get a master's in content area and maybe become a department chair, or you're going to choose a master's in school administration and potentially go to the principalship or superintendency. So I just want to unearth that as an issue.
Well, we have no shortage of issues.